Greetings to you. I'm Brother James Muhammad coming to you live once again on Closing the Gap broadcast. As we assume these various roles in life, as we attempt to help the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, one of the best roles that we can assume, and of course we are, is that of a student. And as a student in the ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we open up always with this salutation. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the one God to whom all praise is due, the Lord of the worlds. We thank Almighty God Allah for his merciful and prophetic intervention in our affairs in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. And we thank him for raising up from our midst his messenger, Messiah, the exalted Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, through whom we have been given our beloved and blessed Redeemer. And I refer to him as my personal Savior. The man of whom I speak is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. In their names, we're very happy and honored to once again extend to you the greetings of Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. We are again happily joined by our dear co-hosts, our dear sister Stala Muhammad, the managing editor of the greatest paper that has ever been published by the greatest publisher. We refer to the Final Call newspaper. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Stala, and welcome once again.
Wa alaikum salam, sir. Happy to be back once again on another exciting episode of Closing the Gap. Thank you.
All praises due to Allah. And of course, our dear brother and fellow student in the ministry. He is the student minister of the great city of Tampa and stretching throughout the Bay Area. Our dear brother, student minister Chad Muhammad of Muhammad Mosque number 47.
Assalamu alaikum, family.
Glad
to be here. Looking forward to this show. We got my homeboy on.
That's right. That's right.
I should say my home bro, right?
That's right.
That's great. Assalamu alaikum, family. Glad to be
here. Walaikum salam.
Praise.
Forgive us if we get just a little loose because we're all very much in love with each other here.
Yes,
this is our guest, very special, of course.
That's right.
But indeed he is our brother for many years. I think I don't know how many years, maybe about 25 or 30 or
25,
something.
26, yes, sir.
26 years.
That's right.
All praises due to Allah. We are so very honored and privileged to introduce to many and present to some our dear brother, John Muhammad. He is, of course, a member of the Nation of Islam, and he also has the distinction of being recently elected to the seat of the 7th District Council in St. Petersburg, Florida. Assalamu alaikum once again, Brother John.
Alaikum salam, beloved. Thank you for having me.
Now, this is not going to be a political conversation as such. It's going to be a personal conversation with perhaps political overtones. The overtones shall not be contributed by us.
Yes, sir.
But it may be by others after the broadcast.
That's right.
The subject, of course, the theme of this show is why is Farrakhan the litmus test for Black politicians? And keeping in the theme, and we're not going to dwell on that because we want to talk about the great work that our brother is doing in his position, in his political office. So, but we have to mention it just as a caution to let people know that we are still in the fight.
That's right. That's right.
And so, keeping with the theme, we want to play a clip from our dear brother and student minister, Ilya Rashad Muhammad, the member of the research team of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, dealing with this particular phenomenon.
The people of Monroe want to know why you gave a key to the city of Louis Farrakhan, Mr. Mayor.
Ever wonder why celebrities and leaders are reprimanded or punished when they say something nice about the good work of Minister Farrakhan? Or say anything that's critical of Jewish wrongdoing? Jews blasted Erykah Badu a few years ago just for being critical of Israel's treatment of the Palestinians, the same Israel that oppresses and attacks the Black Africans of that region. Now they've revisited their attacks when they questioned Sister Erykah about her admiration for the Honorable Minister Farrakhan. And when she didn't back down from expressing her love for the minister, their spin doctors went to work and tried to trap her with the same false charges of anti-Semitism. Jewish leaders like Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL went to work quickly to turn it into an attack against Minister Farrakhan. For the last 3 or more decades, white folks applied what became known as the Farrakhan litmus test to measure Black consciousness against white rule.
Minister Farrakhan has certainly been a litmus test for people, whether it was fair or not, because people who want that acceptability in the crossover, you might say, can't stand the inquisition that comes with being associated with Minister Farrakhan.
I wish it.
Basically, if you show support for Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam's programs for Black independence, then you threaten white folks' establishment.
Well, controversy tonight, Monroe Mayor Jamie Mayo giving a key to the city to the leader of a designated hate group.
Conversely, if they get Black leaders to slander him, then those leaders are considered good Negroes who won't threaten the white power system. The Farrakhan litmus test first became a popularized tool during the 1980s when Minister Farrakhan toured the country, enlightening Black folks towards self-empowerment and independence. Frightened by this unity, members of the Jewish community attacked him in the media and wrongfully stigmatized him as an anti-Semite.
But he also stands for racism, which is bad. He stands for anti-Semitism, which is bad. And he stands for scapegoating, which I think is ultimate.
Causing Black leaders and organizations to distance themselves and their resources from helping him or standing with him in the cause of Black people's independence. It happened during Jesse Jackson's presidential candidacy in 1984, when they advised Reverend Jackson to distance himself from the minister. And in truth, most Black politicians are pressured to denounce the minister if they are to maintain favor with their white Jewish backers.
Do you believe that Louis Farrakhan is an anti-Semite?
Sure, but I mean...
It certainly applies to our celebrities too. Remember how Arsenio Hall caught a lot of flack from Jews just for inviting the minister to his late night show?
That now they don't want your show to show in the marketplace that it has shown. They've threatened you that they will take you off of the air and ruin your career.
Needless to say, his show ended that very week. We've never seen in history where so much emphasis and attention was placed on keeping people from hearing what this one man has to say. They're not concerned with the foolish entertainment and debauchery we engage with, because that stuff doesn't threaten white folks' control. In fact, it empowers their domination. The Farrakhan litmus test was rekindled during Barack Obama's first presidential campaign, when candidate Hillary Clinton and journalist Tim Russert pressed Obama to denounce and reject the minister on public television.
Do you accept the support of Louis Farrakhan?
You know, I have been very clear in my denunciation of Minister Farrakhan's anti-Semitic comments, I think.
Although hesitant, Obama's unjustified denunciation of Minister Farrakhan was politically expedient in order for him to be approved of by powerful white Jewish backers. Knowing Black people wanted to see a Black man reach the highest office in the land, Brother Farrakhan withstood the unjustified repudiation, and he sacrificed himself so that Obama could shine at the time. And he made sure the Nation of Islam didn't jeopardize Obama's aspirations. See, they used the minister as a test, like a lightning rod, to see who's more compliant to white causes more than the needs of the suffering Black masses. This dichotomy is congruent with the Jews' maltreatment of Jesus in the Bible. whereas powerful Jewish leaders frightened the people from publicly acknowledging the truth of Jesus' good works. They had the people too scared to even say something positive about a divinely good man. Even now, Jewish-operated groups like the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center have used their power to wickedly miscategorize the Nation of Islam as a hate group, producing legislation against the Muslims, defaming the character of the Muslims, and thereby causing the loss of resources and relationships that ultimately hurt all of our people. They continue to threaten Black leaders, organizations, and celebrities, from befriending Minister Farrakhan and the nation with extortion-like tactics. You ever wonder why even some of these hardcore rappers who supposed to be all fearless and talk trash to everybody, but they won't say a thing about those Jews who run the entertainment industry? See, the truth that Minister Farrakhan shares is the very thing that exposes those who control and manipulate the industries behind the most virulent forms of white supremacy.
Yes, they exercise extraordinary control, and Black people will never be free in this country until they're free of that kind of control. And I do intend, by the help of God, to break up that control.
That's why Brother Farrakhan threatens their systems of white rule, because Farrakhan is not just an individual. Instead, he embodies the aspirations of true freedom and independence for all his people. So we know why the enemy uses him as the litmus test, because what he represents is the criteria against their inordinate control and manipulation of Black leaders and organizations. And they're afraid that you might share those same aspirations.
Thank you, Brother Minister Ilya Rashad Muhammad. As I before stated, there is too much positivity in the work of our dear brother and many who are in the Nation of Islam that occupy political office that we shouldn't dwell necessarily or contribute to that prison in social media and in the media that has been erected for our dear brother. While we are busy working to dismantle walls that divide us as a people, other people are busy erecting walls to keep us divided. And so we want to talk about, very briefly, Brother John, I want to read some of your bio. It in no way encompasses the great work in total of what you have been doing, are doing, but I want to give the people an opportunity to be acquainted with you.
Thank you.
Brother John Muhammad's extraordinary journey began with a vision shared with him by his mother at a tender age of 6. His paternal grandmother told her he was born to be a great man of God, a calling he didn't fully embrace until his early 20s when he joined the Nation of Islam. As a devoted student and member of the ministry class, he was mentored by influential figures like Rasul Muhammad and Minister Abdul Biar Muhammad. During his active tenure in the nation, he most notably served as student secretary and played a pivotal role in establishing Muhammad Mosque number 95 as a chartered affiliate. And yes, he did. Brother John's commitment extended beyond the religious institution. He managed Mr. Muhammad's cleaners and relocated his family to the 2020 apartments where criminal activity, particularly drug-related crimes, was a significant and persistent problem, and worked tirelessly to transform the area into a safe and decent place to live. In 2009, he expanded his service to the community using the national agenda, public policy issues, analysis, and programmatic plan for action that was published during the Million Family March as a tool to organize his community and showcase its local applicability. His visionary leadership resulted in him becoming the president of his neighborhood association and co-founding the Community Development and Training Center. 2 positions he held for almost a decade until being appointed to the St. Petersburg City Council to represent District 7 last year. He is married to his high school sweetheart, and they will be celebrating the 25th wedding anniversary on October 16th. They have 3 daughters and 4 grandsons. Notable accomplishments and additional info. That's
yeah. We'll get into that.
We'll get into that. But let me finish. Current initiatives. And this is what we want to focus on.
Yes, sir.
Current initiatives. One Community Grocery Co-op, St. Petersburg Youth Farm. Under the heading of Social Justice, Structural Racism Study and Recommendations, Office of Supplier Diversity to address disparities in government procurement process, Community Benefits and Agreement Policy, Economic Development and Trade and Commerce, including the 49th Street District and Corridor Development Planning, microfund grants to small businesses, housing in the field of housing, homeless prevention, guaranteed right to counsel for tenants facing eviction, probate assistance programs to help with heir properties that are tied up in court. Under the heading of education and youth opportunities, Barbershop Book Club, Phyllis Wheatley Rise to Read campaign, and under arts and culture, the New Image, that's IMAGE acronym project, the Tampa Bay Breakfast Club radio program, science and technology, the STEM Saturdays, that's STEM, Saturdays at Childs Park Recreational Center, advocating for funding for a digital playground, public safety, the Community Assistance and Life Liaison Program, or CALL, Health and Human Services, the Community Support Hubs. You would think, with all of this wonderful, wonderful, positive stuff, pardon my usage of the word stuff, but activity that is being initiated by our dear brother under his leadership in the council and also in his social activism and political activism. When do they have time? Unfortunately, I was reading, dear brother, and here again,
sure,
we're just going to mention it. We don't want to.
Let's talk, Brother James. I got time today.
Okay, very good.
Yes, sir.
But I was reading this article, which was titled "Farrakhan Follower on Florida City Council Leaves Meeting Rather Than Vote on Anti-Semitism Resolution."
Yes, sir.
I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to pass the baton or the microphone to you, but I want to give my co-hosts opportunities to make opening remarks. So, Sister Starla?
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum once again. And we want to welcome our viewing and listening audience. And of course, as always, as we dialogue this evening and hear from our dear brother, John Muhammad, any questions that you have for him, kindly type your questions in the chat this evening, and we will strive to get through as many of them as possible. But I know I'm extremely interested when Brother James was reading off the initiatives and projects that you have on the table. Again, so many. And so it's obvious that you are a service and asset to the community. So one would just, hope and think that people would be concentrating on that, particularly when you hear so many people complaining about politicians and they don't do this and they don't do that and that don't seem to be engaged with their constituency. So here you have a brother, here you have a man representing a district that he is striving to be a servant of the people. So we definitely want to delve into that this evening. So I'm looking forward to this dialogue as well. And with that, I will pass the mic to Student Minister Chad Muhammad.
Oh, praise be to Allah. Assalamu alaikum once again, family. Just as Sister Starla, just very excited and delighted to be a part of this show. have an idea, brother, on, watching him grow from early stages of Islam, being in St. Pete together, working over there, and not just, as a person, but as a father, as a husband, and as a person that always loved being out in the community, and challenging those that's out in the community that really wanted to see the neighborhood grow. Now being in this position that he in, and just, represent, for our people, not just Muslims, but Black people in general and the people of St. Pete. So glad to have you. Also, just wanted to extend the greetings from our student regional minister, Brother Patrick Muhammad of Assalamu Alaikum, and all of the believers here in the 7th region at Mosque 47. Just, thanks and gratitude, dear brother.
Thank you. And please return the greetings to Student Minister Patrick. I appreciate that.
Praise be to Allah. We'll do, inshallah.
Thank you. So yeah, I want to start. I got to start this way, Brother James.
Go right ahead, man. Make no apologies there, brother. We know what you're under.
Yes, sir. Definitely. In the name of Allah, Beneficent, the Merciful. I do thank you all for the opportunity to be on Closing the Gap broadcast and on Broadcast Network. I have really enjoyed watching its growth and the tremendous success, of the broadcast. And so it's definitely an honor to be here. I wanted to be clear that I'm here tonight as your brother and not in my official capacity as a city council member. Tonight's conversation is a personal conversation for me, and the views that I express are my personal views. While we do intend to speak on the work that we've done and are doing in the community over the past 2 decades, in addition to sharing highlights of my work as a member of the city council, we have to be clear that I'm not here in any official capacity. Yeah. And I'll just jump right in. When you mentioned the resolution on anti-Semitism and the litmus test. And I, quite frankly, growing up in the Nation of Islam, and I can say that because I joined when I was 21 in your living room, Brother James. I remember hearing you speak, and coming to a meeting after, just dealing with all kind of stuff in life. And, we all have our, how we found the nation stories, but it was hearing you articulate, the teachings in that space and that environment. And I was hooked, man, and found what I had been looking for, after studying with Jehovah's Witnesses and Seventh-day Adventists and, growing up in the Bible, not so much in the church, but in the word. And so I was very acquainted with the scripture, and just hearing how you articulated it and the way that you laid it out is what set me on this path, that I've been on for the past 26 years now. So I actually have more time on this side than I have on the outside, more time in this life than I had in my old life. And I'm grateful for that, which was interesting because I didn't encounter the litmus test until I applied to be appointed to city council. And it was something that, my membership and my participation with the Nation of Islam has never been a secret. It's always something that I led with. I introduced myself as Brother John. Anybody who knows me, they call me Brother John. It's like Mr. T. You don't call him T. You say Mr. T. Right. That's the same way with Brother John. Very few people call me John. They call me Brother John. So I always led with that. And, doing that work for, 15 years or so, never faced the actual litmus test until the time of the appointment came. And my naivete and caused it to be a moment where I was like, really? Like that's what we talking about? It caught me off guard in some respects because I had done so much and worked with so many people by Allah's grace that I was like, where is this coming from? And then I later found that it was coming from the Holocaust Museum was, some of the principal, Florida Holocaust Museum was some of the principal organizers in the campaign to stop me from being appointed because of my affiliation with the Nation of Islam. And it was really a moment that as a student in the ministry and a student in the nation, a member of the nation, you hear about it, and you watch it and you observe it in others, and we saw Barack Obama, and we saw Keith Ellison, and we saw so many before us that were faced with that, and you ask yourself, or you declare, how you would handle it. See, if I was them, they ought to tell them, they ought to, but until you're in it, right. I don't think we have an appreciation for the magnitude of that trial, because the consequences of it are severe if you fail the test, and failure is relative to what side of the test you're on. Right. But it was a moment where I knew that I wouldn't denounce the minister or renounce, or any of those other terms that they use to disassociate or all of that. So now it became a question or a matter of, how do I say it? Right? How do I say I'm not going to denounce? How do I say, and prayed on it, reflected on it, and as we do when we get in trouble, I called my mama, and she told me, she said, if you have to change who you are in order to do that job, then that job is not for you. And from there, it just became a matter of, okay, well, I just got to be honest and tell my truth and stand on the truth. And I found myself in a Lazarus situation almost, where, they were lifting up clips, and you know how they do it. They had quotes and clips and different things. They published my background, my criminal record, and all of these things. And, my truth is, I once was blind and now I see. And the person who is responsible for opening my eyes is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I that's the truth. And so for me to denounce that, to denounce him, the spaces that I'm in, the work that I've been able to do, everything has its origins in my acceptance of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as taught by and articulated by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And so this version of me and who I am is, I'm a product of these teachings, and that's just the truth of the matter. And if that disqualifies me from service, as they said that it should, then, we let Allah be the judge of that. But I could not, back away from that, because it's just my truth, and it's a part of my story. It's a part of my testimony. And anybody who knows me knows the significance that, my role, my work, and the Nation of Islam has been in my life. And so that's what I stand on. And that's what that's how I handle the test. But I've seen how, if you want it really badly, and I don't want to, have this a monologue and start preaching, but if it's one of those things where I can see how, if my approach, like if this was something that I had been striving for all of my life, and something that I had been pursuing since I was in high school, you have people who are what they call career politicians, and they've always aspired, to be an elected official and to serve in this way. That was not my story. But I can see how those who have that as their story, when they get to that place where everything is riding on this one question, I can see how they would allow themselves to go the other way and do the denunciations and make the apologies and those types of things. But I never had that in my calling. I was called to public service. I don't really like to refer to myself as a politician, because if I was, I'd be doing a little more singing and dancing. I'm more of a public servant. I like, the calling of public service, and elected office is where that service has landed me. But the political thing to do is to, toe the line and go along to get along. And so that's the qualifier. And I'll succinctly talk about this resolution, and then we can get into the work. So the resolution that was presented, there's this group called IRA, the International, I forget the acronym, it's IRHA, I believe. And there's the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And they have advocated for the acceptance of a definition of anti-Semitism. And they've taken this definition to, different countries and different municipalities around, the United States. And we had a council member who brought it forward as a resolution for the city of St. Petersburg to accept IHRA's definition of anti-Semitism. After reading the resolution and reviewing the resolution, I had questions about it and some issues with the way that it was written, and understanding the phenomenon that comes with, misdefining words and misunderstood words that we know, and the impact of being labeled an anti-Semite. And so for me, my viewpoint and approach to this resolution was different because I've been labeled as an anti-Semite or said that I was a hater or affiliate. So I've been accused of everything that they're saying that we're now passing a resolution against, right? So it's already awkward, right?
It's a setup. Go ahead.
Yeah, it is. And so as I'm reading the definition, I'm asking questions about it. But what they would normally do, Brother James, is when you present a resolution, the person who is the sponsor, you would have a council member who's sponsoring it, and then you'd have someone from the community who's there representing it, and you would have an opportunity to question them about, what you're actually dealing with. And so, thank you. And so as I'm preparing for the conversation with the person who presented the resolution. And when I started asking questions, they were hesitant to come forward. And so one of them came forward. He was a member of the Jewish Federation and also the board chair of the Florida Holocaust Museum. They stepped forward after I called them from the audience to come up to address these questions. Long story short version, the questions were not able to be answered by those who were present because they were not qualified, according to them, to answer those types of questions, and they weren't prepared to answer that type of questioning. And so for me, I wasn't able to vote for the resolution. But also seeing the rise of anti-Semitism and what's happening with, white supremacists, and we saw what happened in Charlottesville, with the tiki torches, and so I unite with them in principle. So I wouldn't be able to vote against it. So I couldn't vote for it. I couldn't vote against it. And so what I decided to do was leave the dais and abstain, which is not uncommon. Right. So I just would be absent for that vote. And that was, how they interpret it and do what they want to do with it. But that was what the crux of the situation was the questions were not able to be sufficiently answered by those who were present. So I couldn't vote for it, and I wouldn't vote against it. And so I left the dais and abstained from the vote, and it passed unanimously in my absence.
Wow. Just to be clear, Brother John, some or much of what was found in that particular proposal, if you will, they have already labeled you as such.
Yes, sir.
Had you participated in voting and subsequently passing that particular, what is the proper political
resolution? It was a
resolution. Thank you. Had you did that, then you would have effectively been admitting, according to them, that you are what they say you are, and then that would have given them ground to come against you politically and otherwise.
Absolutely. And that was the other part of it.
Yes, sir.
Another one of the beautiful things about the way that we're taught by the minister when he talks about, or when I've heard him talk about the electoral process and electoral politics, I remember leading up to like the Million Family March and then the Millions More movement, when the minister was, giving us political education and talking about the electoral process. He said, when we register to vote, we have to be sure that when we vote, we're voting in our own self-interest.
That's right. And
in that moment, that resolution was against my own self-interest.
Right.
Because I had been labeled as, all the things that they were saying in this definition. And as I started parsing the words and asking them to parse the words, it became more and more clear to me that this definition is overly broad and extremely subjective. And at one point, the board chair of the Florida Holocaust Museum, I asked him, who is the Jewish community? That was the question. Because there are some Jews who, as the scripture puts it, who say they are Jews, that they're not.
That's right.
But also there are members of the Jewish community who don't refer to Hebrew Israelites as Jews. They don't consider Messianic Jews Jews. So these are people, so they have differences of opinion. So Jews could actually be anti-Semitic according to the way that this definition was written. And when I asked about it, the response that I got was, well, that's in the eye of the beholder. And that was problematic for me, especially when we're talking about legislating policy, because as Black people, we know that we be holding the bag all the time. That beholding thing, we never get the benefit of these subjective definitions and terms. And again, as such, I was able to, really rely on my personal lived experience of being referred to as an anti-Semite and being told that, I should be disqualified from office and all of these things. And then recounting some of the history in that moment of, how Martin Luther King was once considered or called an anti-Semite when he was in Birmingham, Alabama. And then Malcolm X, who was referred to as an anti-Semite and then, subsequently put on a postage stamp. And so just being able to show them how this definition is overly broad and subjective, not to mention the fact that out of their examples that they give, because the definition also provides 11 examples of what anti-Semitism is, and 7 of those 11 examples refer to how you relate to or communicate about the state of Israel. And so there were members of the Jewish community themselves who said that this definition is flawed and it needs work. But again, in that moment, and I'll be honest, Brother James, I did kind of get caught up in the moment and I got a little long-winded. Yeah. As y'all can see, I do. So pardon me if I did.
All right, go ahead.
And what happened was they called the question while I was giving my presentation. And when you call the question, that means all dialogue has to stop and we have to take the vote right away.
Wow.
And so I was interrupted as I'm giving, this passionate, dialogue about why we should rework this definition to make it more workable and applicable. And got cut off because the question was called and I couldn't finish. And so when the question was called, I asked if I could speak. They reminded me, no, you can't, which it was like, oh yeah, I've never seen them call a question since I've been there 11 months as another one of those things, but they called it that day. And so being overtime, having the question called, I immediately, thanked them for the opportunity to share my position and then walked off of the dais so that the vote could happen in my absence. But again, voting, I couldn't vote against myself, right. And those who would like to have open and honest dialogue about the relationship that we have with members of the Jewish community. And I've been doing that, Brother James and Brother Chad, Sister Starla. I've had several meetings with members of the Jewish community after I've been appointed, and we've had wonderful conversations and actually developed some significant relationships. There's one particular woman who I was on the phone with her today. We talked for about an hour because we've developed a relationship as a result of this controversy. But when it comes to the party line or the litmus test, right? Because that's when it comes to the litmus test, that's when the politics of the group in some cases supersede their personal relationships. And so we know you're a good brother, Brother John. We have no doubt about it. We know that you're not an anti-Semite, but that Farrakhan, we gotta, and they just can't get past it. And so what I've learned since that moment is, and what the position that I've taken is that I'm not responsible for their triggers.
Right.
Because the way that we love the minister, some of them, when just the mention of his name causes reactions in their body. Like I've seen them, you know, when I say, and you know, they're with me, they're okay with the drug dealing part of my story. But that moment when I say, and I joined the Nation of Islam, that's when I can see the, you know, the energy and the mood shifts, because it's a trigger for them based upon what they've been told about the minister, what they've heard, the clips that they've shared, the way that they view the Savior's Day addresses, because they watch the minister's Savior's Day lectures. And so we've had conversations just about, you know, the different reactions to hearing the same words. It's been really encouraging in some instances and then disappointing in others, because the agenda sometimes is to wear me down and to, you know, I think we're getting through to him. You know, this is kind of the language that, you know, and so it's like, okay, well, if that's your objective and that's your mission, then we need to we need to agree to disagree, and let's talk about the initiatives and the programs and the projects that we're working on, and if there's opportunities for us to do something together. Because on this particular point, it's clear to me, I've like poured my heart out and shared my story, and people have told you, but you're not going to change your mind, and I'm okay with that, because I'm not going to change my mind either. My life is my life. My life story is my life story. My experience with the minister is my experience with the minister, and that's not going to change. And so we just have to agree to disagree respectfully. And if there's opportunities for us to move forward and do things, then we can do that. And that's the space that we're in now.
We appreciate that response, Brother John, and admire you for it.
Praise be to God.
I want to pass the mic over to our dear sister and co-host, Sister Starla. I'll just say that this, of course, is reminiscent of what occurred during what is referred to as, what we affectionately refer to as the dope buster era.
Yes, sir.
In the Nation of Islam, on our own, voluntarily decided to take up the responsibility to clear out what actually was an open air drug market in Washington, D.C. And we were very, very successful, to the point where we were able to garner some government money because of the sacrifice, the work, and the success of that work of the brothers who were affectionately referred to as the dope busters. But you know, dear brother, and our listening and viewing audience, do you know that because they perceived an offense on behalf of the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, they decided in the government to come against him to cut off the funds. And subsequently, the area was reduced once again to another drug open air market, telling you that their perceived offense by anyone is more important to them than the well-being of a people, than the cleaning up of a community, than the anti-drug and anti-addiction efforts and drug trafficking efforts, successful efforts of any organization, as long as they feel offended.
Yes, sir. And before we pass the mic, I'll say this. I've actually shared that example in conversations that I've had with members of the Jewish community. And I've also lifted up the example of the Power Program, people organized and working for economic rebirth, and their responses or reactions to the minister and the harm that they caused our community in response to the minister around the Power Program. And so we have these examples of where, like you said, the perceived offense or the actual offense that they've taken, the response to the words have shown up in ways that have been detrimental to our community. And I've been able to articulate and share that with those who I've been having conversations with. And you're absolutely right, Brother James. How can we say that the punishment doesn't fit the offense.
That's right.
And so this balance of power that we talk about is something that I think also is another one of the sticking points and the concerns when we talk about the litmus test, because if you are standing with Minister Farrakhan, that means you're standing for principles that puts you on an equal footing, and it changes the dynamics of the relationship that we have, which is what is being referred to now as equity. Everybody wanted equality at one point, and now we're talking about equity. And so when we start talking about equity and equitable exchanges, we're talking about the equitable exchange of ideas and the ability to exact consequences based upon offenses. And Black people, we don't have that same ability, yet, right? To exact that type of repercussions and consequences to perceived offenses of our community.
Well, I appreciate that, dear brother. We've been charged with this misnomer or this false charge of anti-Semitism. But we have history that proves not only that we're not anti-Semitic, but you are anti-Black.
Come on, man.
All right, so let's move on to our dear sister Stala Muhammad. Sister Stala.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Brother John, you mentioned it in your opening remarks, but all of us, when we get in a particular situation, when we're faced with something, we will wax all day about, if this happens, I'm going to say this, I'm going to do that. But talk about, what have you learned about yourself during these last 11 months being on the city council, and some of the, the challenges that you've been faced with, particularly with the Farrakhan litmus test. And like you said, I'm sure at a certain point in time, you're like, okay, again, what will Farrakhan do? And we reflect back on his wisdom, his guidance. We see his example. But during this whole process, what have you discovered and learned about Brother John Muhammad?
Thank you for that. That's a beautiful question. I'm actually getting emotional. I'm feeling that in my body, Sister Starla, because I wasn't ready for that one. I've learned through this process that Allah loves me individually.
Go ahead, brother. Yes, sir.
Because when we talk about, Allah loves us, I don't think we connect it to us specifically and individually. And it cognited for me like, Allah, you really have shown me that you're with me as long as I'm with you. And as long as I stay with you, and as long as I stand on what I've learned about you from the Nation of Islam, and through my experiences, I've learned that my grandmother, when she told my mom that what I was born to do, and I struggled with it, and how I, didn't understand what this meant, it all became clear to me in this moment. There were scripture, there were songs that I would hear, Sister Starla, that would just break me down in tears, where there's this one song where it talks about God's favor, where it says he favored me, right? In spite of all my enemies, in spite of all, these things, he favored me, right? And the realization of that prayer when we say, guide us on the path of those whom you have bestowed your favor.
That's right.
And when I walked into that, literal lion's den, how Allah blessed me to keep my cool, because it was all kind of stuff going in and things that were being said in that moment. But it was something that Allah, it was a way that he was using me to keep me cool, even at one point where I felt, and it's going to sound spooky, but I felt coolness going down the back of my legs.
Yeah.
And I couldn't explain where this coolness came from. And just the confidence and the assurance that Allah is with us and Allah is with me was something that I have no doubt about. And it doesn't mean that I'm, how we say it, I'm not perfect in, my expression. I think that goes without saying, that we still have things that we struggle with and battles that we fight. But in that moment and the moments that have followed that, I have learned, man, that Allah is real and that he loves me, Brother John Muhammad, right. From Child's Park. You know what I mean? Like he has something for me to do. And I'm still working on what that is. But my trust in Allah and my confidence in him, it has just grown by leaps and bounds because I defied, conventional wisdom and even had disagreements with people who were telling me how I should show up in the face of this in that moment. Because of my values, I wouldn't capitulate. And Allah blessed me to get the appointment as a confirmation. And I know that this is not it. This is not the final stop, but it is something to this moment where he showed me, Brother John, I got you. I got something for you. I also learned about the resilience of my family, because that's an extension of me. So it's me personally, but my family and the support, of my wife and the strength of my wife.
Yes.
And my children and those who are close to me. It just showed me a lot about who's really for me, and who's with me in the cool of the day, as they say, but when the heat of the night comes, and so it just really took my faith in Allah and my ability to see others to a whole nother level, because now I can look and I can see, where my help is coming from. You know what I'm saying? And where the support is coming from. And of course it's coming from the Lord, but then there's those who he puts around us. Some will tell you, as the brother mentioned the other night at the workshop, some will tell you to go backwards, some will tell you to stay still, and then some will tell you to press forward. And so being able to have that as a reality for me has been one of the biggest lessons. Standing in the Need of Prayer was another one of the songs, Starla, by John P. Key. I'm standing in the need. And I put that on, and it says, not my mother, not my father, not my sister, but me, oh Lord, I'm standing in the need of prayer. Because we pray for everybody else and we pray, but I'm the one who needs prayer right now. And order my steps. That was another one of the prayers that I was praying and songs that I was listening to. Order my steps in your word, dear Lord. Lead me, guide me every day. And so those were some of the things that carried me and continue to carry me through. It's my mom. She raised us up on gospel music and being able to hear those songs now, knowing that you're living it, reading those scriptures when having your Peter moment. Would you deny your Lord? And then being able to have that moment and Allah blessing you, to come through it in the way that you thought you would, or the way that you prayed you would. It's a confirmation, of the faith, and really a testament to how, Allah is with us when we believe and do good.
That's beautiful.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you for that answer, dear brother. Brother John, I wanted to ask you, speaking on the litmus test, do you feel that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is measured by equal standard, or is it unjust? And why either or when it comes to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan?
I think the standard is higher for the minister. And when I was looking at litmus test and what is it actually, right? It's a criterion and a standard by which something is measured. And I talk with, and I have friends who talk about how they're being set apart, like as a part of their spiritual development and growth, being set apart and unalike. And I think because of the minister's work, it has set him apart from so many others, that standard is higher for him. Fairness is a I mean, we can kind of, however you want to deal with that, but it just is what it is. the minister is his life and the way he's lived his life has put him in a position, man, you know, by Allah's grace, where it's just undescribable of how do you measure, you know, leadership? How do you how do you measure leadership and love? How do you quantify that? How do you you know what I mean? And so it's just because he's just stands out and he's head and shoulders above what we have commonly seen or what we have experienced as Black leaders, because he's a divine man. He's a divine leader. And so the fact that he's divine immediately puts him. So if he was a community leader, that's one thing. If he was a political leader, that's another thing. But this man is a divinely guided leader. And so the standard for where he is in all of those things, I think automatically is going to be raised. And I wouldn't say that it's unfair or unjust. It's just a reality of who he is. And we have examples of men like him all throughout the scriptures where people were forced to decide or to acknowledge where you are as it relates to this man and where you are as it relates to his message. And I think that's just the space that he's holding in our lifetime, you know, because there were others in other, you know, I'm sure that there was a litmus test when Abraham was grinding, you know, what you think about Abraham, you know, all right, you know, he good, he got wives or whatever, but you know, he ain't did nothing to me. And then you have people who loved Abraham and would follow him and would be, you know, I'm sure Lot had a litmus test, you know, what you think about Lot? You know, oh man, he talking crazy over there. He talking whatever, like all of, and so he's the man for our time, in my opinion. But we have examples, and that's why I said it earlier in my response to Sister Starla. We've seen Jesus was a litmus test in his time, 2,000 years ago, and he fits that model. And so now it's up to his contemporaries, right? Who we are the people who are living in this time. And I just pray that when, you know, they write the story about that little brother from Child's Park who was raised from the dead, you know, and the man put spittle on his eyes and told him, look, I was blind, but now I see. And then they called, you know, his parents because they didn't believe him. So what your mama and them say? Well, you know, let me ask you, they did that with me, Brother Chad. They called, you know, people and they've told me, yeah, we looked, but we couldn't find, you know, anything about you other than your relationship to this man. And so again, I don't even classify it as fair or unfair. It's just a reality that he is the criterion. He is the standard right now when we talk about Black excellence, Black liberation, freedom, justice, equality, and righting the wrongs that have been done to Black people. He is the one that embodies and represents our struggle. He articulates it in a way that causes people to be polarized, and you have to take a position.
That's beautiful.
Praise you to Allah. Thank you, sir.
Oh, praises due to Allah. I would like to briefly, for our viewing and listening audience as well, and hearing your testimony, Brother John, I reached for our dear brother, student minister Demetric's book.
Yes.
Who Do They Say I Am? The Vindication of Minister Louis Farrakhan, elected officials, celebrities, religious leaders, journalists, and scholars bear witness to the character, impact, and value of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So for those who are tuning in, who may be with us for their very first time, and you're maybe like, well, this litmus test, and you want to learn a little bit more about that, add this particular book as well as others to your library to hear and read from, you know, people around the world on the impact that the minister has had and continues to have on their lives. So I just wanted to share that for those tuning in.
And if I'm just going to give a shout out to Brother Dimitri, because he showed up for me very big, you know, in the process, you know, in preparing for the resolution. He helped me, he coached me through some things, and also Brother Marcus, Mayor of Benton Harbor, I spoke with him and the former alderman, Brother John, out of St. Louis. So I talked to and consulted with, other Black elected officials who are members of the Nation of Islam, and in preparation for the appointment process, and also during this process. But that is an amazing book, and I also want to thank Brother Dimitri, if he's watching, publicly for the support that he's given to me as we've been navigating these waters.
All praises due to Allah. Once again, we want to encourage our viewing and listening audience to engage our dear brother with questions regarding, hopefully, the great work that he is doing in this particular seat of a city council member, but of course, on any of the subject matters relating to this show. This show is particularly important to me in that it broadens the perception, if you will, or the projection, the image, if you will, of the Nation of Islam. Those who might think, well, they're anti-political. Is that word anti again,
Yeah.
Or they're apolitical. They don't get involved with things that are important to us. This is, in fact, important to us. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said he's with politicians, but what we need are good politicians.
Yes, sir.
And finally, what he said was, we need a Muslim politician.
Yes, sir.
And
I reconcile that, Brother James, because I was anti-politics and apolitical for a long time.
Yeah, so
until I became the president of my local neighborhood association. Well, not even then, I got engaged with the neighborhood association, and I want to give a shout out to Brother Lewis, Muhammad, who was our student minister at the time, and also my condolences to his family. My prayers are with them. But Brother Lewis asked me to go to a meeting on his behalf, and to sit in, and it was an assembly of Black leadership in the city of St. Pete. It was called People Advocating Change Together, and they had like a who's who from the different sectors of the community, and we were in these breakout groups, and we were invited. Brother Lewis couldn't make it, so he asked me to go in on his behalf, and I was a part of the public safety committee, and being student secretary at the time, and trained FOI, we always have a pen and a pad.
That's
and
right.
So when I'm in this meeting, I'm taking copious notes. Y'all remember how I used to be, right? So
Yes,
so still am. But I'm in this meeting with my pen and pad as they're having this conversation, and I'm taking notes, not really saying a whole lot. And at the end of the breakout group, they said, okay, we want to do a report back, to the broader group, because it was smaller groups, and then we do this larger report back. And so when it came time to do the report back, because I was the one that was taking the notes, they said, well, you should give the report. And a part of my report back was sharing with them how a lot of what we were discussing fit with the 9 ministries model of the Nation of Islam, and how we have a programmatic plan of action that that was developed as a part of the Million Family March, and it was policy and initiatives. And I said I would like to share this with you all and see if there's ways that we can implement this locally. And that was just inspired by being there in the moment and seeing what was happening. And that was like a turning point for my engagement with the political process, because even then I was like, still like, these are public policies, initiatives, but a lot of this stuff we can do on our own, and it doesn't require participation from, the government. We don't need grants. We don't need all of that stuff, right? And it was Brother Jabbar, again, he was the political one in the group, and he said, well, Brother John, we got this policy, thing. We need to interview candidates that are running for office and see where they stand on our agenda, which and I was like, I don't want to do that. Them people gonna do what they want to do. But he wouldn't relent. I mean, he wouldn't give up, and he pressed me to do it. So we organized the candidate forum. And when they saw that we were able to bring out voters and people who were interested in public policy, the relationship that we had and the resources that were coming to our neighborhood began to flow. So it started out like this, and then I stopped. They used to say, well, what are we going to do about Child's Park? And they scratched their head and try and figure it out. But then after we had that candidate forum, it was this enthusiasm. Brother John, what you want to do in Child's Park? So Sister Naira came to me and she said, we want a baseball field because my son playing baseball. So I said, yeah, well, we want a baseball field. 6 weeks later, we had a baseball field because of our ability to show that we have voters, and people will come out. We said we wanted to improve the Child's Park Lake, and we want, and it was just like these things that we started asking for. The resources started coming to us as a result of our engagement in the political process. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's how this works. It's about the dollars and the resources, because the politicians control the budget and they got their hand on the spigot. So if we could influence the politicians and let them know, like, this is where we think these things should be flowing, then we can get some things done in our community. And that's what we became known for. People were like, well, how did you do that? How did you get that field in Child's Park? How did you get that lake over there in Child's Park? How did you get them to come in and investigate air quality issues in the neighborhood? It's because we demonstrated our ability to turn out people who could decide whether you got elected or not. And so they became responsive to our needs because we were actively engaged politically. And that's what kind of thrust me into this life. I didn't get into it to try and run for office. I just got into it because I saw that they had their hands on the spigot and we needed them to spread it around a little bit.
Yes, sir. All right, let's keep it rolling.
Yes, all praises due to Allah. Brother John, can you talk a little bit about your engagement or work with young people in your district? And sometimes our younger people, sometimes even with some of us older ones, they're maybe not necessarily actively engaged in politics, because again, I think a lot of us, we look at national politics, maybe even state, but there's the saying, of course, that all politics is local. So can you talk about, what you're doing in terms of engaging our young people in the political process, or even in being a public servant?
Sure.
Your dedication to service. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And I feel like I'm getting old because my stories are long. So I'm trying to be brief. The first program that we did with our organization and the engagement around youth, we talked to some members of the community about outreach and our ability to do outreach, and how we would go door to door and we would take people and train them and show them life skills. And so we got a little small grant to hire some young people to do outreach. And so we said, well, where are we going to find these young people? Well, I said, well, I got 3 children. Jabbar had 4 children. And I think we might have used one of Sister Naira's children. She participated. We started with our families. And so our engagement with youth, and I'll say it explicitly, it starts with our families. And we took flack for that because they say, oh, his youth program was consistent of him and his homeboys' kids. Well, what aren't our children youth, and don't they need opportunities and resources? And so from there, we started reaching out to our nephews and nieces and our family members, because we have members of our family who need guidance and direction and support and tools that we have. But sometimes when we think about the community, we're exteriorizing and we're talking about children other than our own. And so my first engagement was starting with our families and the families of those who were close to me. And then the things that what they would do is they would invite their friends. And so we started having conversations with like my children's friends. And so it grew from there. And then we would go into the rec centers and we have conversations with those who are part of teen councils. But our engagement of late, as it relates to the political process, I've been working with students. And so we have some USF students right now who helped us with our budget recommendations, because each council member has the opportunity to suggest things that you'd like to have in the budget. And so these USF students actually went through, 300 pages of the budgets as a part of their class assignment. And then we have been working to come up with recommendations from that. We've also engaged students around, we engaged Stetson Law School, which is a local law school here. So we would talk with the students there and allow them to get, community service hours and credits towards their courses by helping to solve and address communal problems through the legal system. And so that's how we began, our Smell Something, Say Something campaign. And we had them look at our neighborhood plans because each, municipality has a plan. So we would engage them directly in the planning process. We would do focus groups with them. There's signs that, are placed out to the rec centers that has all of the rules: no running, do not do this, do not. And I said, well, what y'all think about those rules? If you could write the rules, what would you write? And so we would ask them, and we do workshops and focus groups with them to help to see that somebody's writing the rules that are governing your lives. We call them politicians, right? So do you want to be one of the people who write the rules, or do you just want to be subject to the rules? And so just showing them the impact that politics has on their lives begins to open up them to this whole thing. Like, yeah, well, I'd ask them if you had, $1 million, what would you do with it? And then they would start talking about how they would engage around the budget and what they would do with the resources and the funds that are available, and then we would, get with so that'll be like the younger groups, middle school. I'm not really that good with elementary students. Like, that's not my audience, right? So like 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade on up is kind of the target or the sweet spot for me when it comes to youth. But the engagement is around, who makes the rules, and if you could make the rules, who spends the money, and if you could spend the money, how would you do it? And we take that information and we turn it into policy with, other students and other policymakers, and we submit them as recommendations. The St. Pete Youth Farm is one of those types of ideas, because we asked them, where does food come from in one of our settings, and overwhelmingly a lot of them said Publix, Walmart, and it's like, no, we got some work to do. So we started introducing the concept of urban farming and agriculture to really show them how there's money to be made, the economics of cooperative business ownership, and also providing food for ourselves, our families, and our community is another opportunity. So it's just really engaging them around the problems that are happening, that they're experiencing. And I also use them, for intel, what's going on, what's happening out here, what y'all dealing with, who's who and what's what. And they help to inform, a lot of the issues. So we're able to mediate and broker some, squash some beefs, if you will, because, just our engagement and our relationship with them. But yeah, we actually have a strong contingent of young people that have helped us with policy making and inform the way we make our recommendations for the budget. We also have a STEM Saturday program that we put together. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. And so we created space for them to be able to come in. We actually had Riza Islam. He came when he was here. He came and he was able to, speak to the youth in the STEM Saturday program, and engaging them in robotics and, chemistry and different science and technical industries. We bring in people, like we had a 3D printer, and, engaging them in those type of activities as well to pique their interest in things other than, sports and basketball.
Praise
sport and play.
Sport and play, come on. Praise be to Allah. Brother John, I remember by Allah's grace, myself and some of the brothers got a chance to go to St. Pete for the town hall meeting.
Yes, sir.
Where you gathered a lot of the people from the community, and our wonderful newspaper, The Final Call. We got a chance to write an article on it and put it out. Just so happened to come out Valentine's Day.
Yes, sir.
February 14th of 2023, what they call Valentine's Day. But, in attending that meeting and watching you in action, just to see how the community, they love you. And those that was out, and they was mentioning different concerns, different things that was taking place in the community. And in the article, we talked about, because at the town hall, there was breakout sessions that discussed different topics that impact that district. And, and you spoke on as far as the food insecurity, but it was also talking about affordable housing, landscaping. You spoke some right now on the youth, and then entrepreneurship and whatnot. From that town hall meeting to date, right now, how has the progress been coming along since then to now?
Thank you for that question, Brother Chad. It's been phenomenal, man. So I'm trying to see where to start. I'll start with the small business and entrepreneurial support. So again, what we did, so following that town hall, we did a series of town halls, and we also put out a survey and asked people to take the survey to help inform, our policy making and decisions. And we were able to work with the administration to create a grant program for small businesses.
Right.
So the administration put 1.35 million in the budget that we can give directly to small businesses, and we did tiers. And so we had like a $2,500 grant for startup businesses, and then we have a $5,000 grant, and then a $10,000 grant. And one of the things that came out of the town hall was they had these types of programs before, but they required matching. So if you got a $5,000 grant, you had to match it with $5,000. We said we want to waive the match requirement, because if a small business or an entrepreneur had the 10,000 to match you, they wouldn't need your 10,000. And so we were able to successfully advocate for waiving the match requirement as long as the grantees participated in a program that helped them develop a spending plan, develop a business plan, a marketing plan. And so since the town hall, we've distributed $430,000 in community grants that have gone directly to small businesses in the Southside CRA is what the area that we designated it. And we've been able to put that in place. Amina's, you might have heard of Amina's Catering.
That's right.
She was actually one of the grantees that was able to receive, support to be able to, get what she needs to operate her restaurant.
That's right.
And make upgrades to her facility. And similar, things were happening with other businesses. One of the companies was able to write a business plan and then pursue funding in that regard. We've at the town hall, we were hearing a lot about people who have descendants who have left them properties. And because of the way that the city programs are written, if you have a lien on your property, or if the property is not in your name, you can't access these resources. Again, we started with trying to figure out how to make sure that our people got the resources that were available to them and not having to send this money back. And so one of the things that we found was that a lot of our properties are in probate. And so we just passed a program that will provide assistance to those who have heir properties or properties that are in probate and they need assistance to prevent homelessness. We developed a project around the right to counsel. So I'll say this before I talk about right to counsel. One of the first things that I did, Brother Chad, was get rid of this loophole that was excluding people who have housing vouchers, right? So if you had a housing voucher, landlords could decide whether or not they would rent to you. So it was source of income discrimination. And so we closed that loophole so that you couldn't discriminate against somebody who had a housing voucher. The state of Florida actually turned around and preempted that. And so we passed that in December, early January. And then in July, the Florida legislature basically came in and removed a lot of the work that we did around housing and said that we can no longer control tenant or regulate tenant landlord relationships because we were so pro-tenant. But one of the things that we were able to do, and we just did actually last week, we approved the funding, was that if a tenant is facing eviction, they would have the right to counsel, just like how when you get arrested and you go to court, like you have a right to an attorney. Now we know the public defender system is flawed or whatever, but in civil cases, you don't have that option. Well, what we did was we said, it's been shown that 80% of the time when a tenant has legal representation, it works out better for both parties. And so we approved in the budget where now anyone who's facing eviction has access to funds, access to an attorney that will be able to assist them in navigating the eviction process, which may avoid it altogether. So they don't end up getting evicted. It doesn't end up on their record. And so now they can still apply for other places and get, homes in other places. So that's just a couple of and then 49th Street is another thing I'll say, Brother Chad, since that there's a corridor planning program. And a lot of times when you look at, like if you go down Fowler in Tampa and you see what they're doing over there, and you're just amazed at how they've progressed and been able to get it. You go to these downtowns. And so what we did was we broke up our corridors and we said, okay, what corridors do we want to develop? And we began organizing the businesses in these corridors to form associations. And as an association, you get to develop your corridor plan. Well, remember I talked about earlier how we had a plan, but there was no resources going to the plan. Once I peeped that, it was like, oh, okay, we can get the money, but we got to have a plan. Okay, so we're going to organize and create a plan. And then when we apply for the resources, there's no reason that we should be denied. And so we're actually meeting on Monday with the 49th Street businesses. We have about 40 businesses that we organize now, and we're creating a vision for what we'd like to see in our business district for the next 10 to 15 years. And once we create that vision, we're going to take that and start putting that into budget and policy recommendations so that the implementation can be funded.
That is excellent.
Allahu Akbar. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Brother John.
Yes, sir. For those of you who may have just tuned in, we have the privilege of hosting our dear brother, John Muhammad, a student and follower of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and a council member of the 7th District here in St. Petersburg, Florida. We are entertaining we are entertaining the subject matter, of course, why is Farrakhan the litmus test for Black politicians? We want to again encourage our viewing and listening audience to tune in as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook as we are building our subscriptions. And we want to offer more and to a broader community these relevant broadcasts that deal with real issues. This one in particular, we're very happy to be numbered among those who are a brother, friend to our brother, but we are happy to extol his great work, not only in his position as a city council person, but also as a human being. So welcome, brother, welcome back to our viewing and listening audience. We have about a half hour. It's amazing how fast 2 hours goes.
I'm trying to tell you.
All praise be to Allah. John, I want to ask you, beloved.
Sure.
Tell us what the responsibility of the city council is as it relates to the city and specifically to our people, our neighborhoods.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. Yes, so the way that I explain it is the city is a municipal corporation because we have our idea. We say the city. It's a municipal corporation. And so as a corporation, there's a structure just like any other corporation where you have a board and you have a CEO. So the city council is equivalent to the board of directors of a corporation. And then the mayor is like the CEO. And so as the board, we have a fiduciary responsibility to control the budget. We approve the budget. So the mayor, he manages the staff and the day-to-day operations of the city. and we set policy, the rules, the regulations, and the framework that will govern the city. And then we allocate resources that the mayor, says that he needs. And so working with the mayor, if he says, okay, well, we need stormwater, and wastewater, we need to increase the budget for wastewater, then the board of directors or the city council will review these requests. We get presentations from staff about what the need is of the residents, and then we make suggestions, recommendations, and have the final approval on the budget. And so that's the legislative and policy work. And then we also have a role that deals with community engagement and public relations, where being in communication with the members of the districts that we represent about what's happening with the board and with the administration. And so it's a communication role or a liaison, so that we can truly make sure that we're representing what's in the best interest of those who we serve and in our district. And so in short order, again, we're a board of directors. We approve the budget. We approve policy and procedures. We engage with the community to help inform our decisions, if we're doing it right, because some people come in with their own ideas and they have their own community that they're beholden to. But I really pride myself on being deeply involved, deeply engaged. As Brother Chad mentioned, the town halls, not just showing up to say, this is what we're going to do, but saying, what do you all want us to do? How can we serve you as a public servant? What are your ideas? And then we co-create and bring those to the administration and the rest of our colleagues as recommendations and approvals for resources and allocation.
Well, that is interesting. So they are, in truth, our servants.
Absolutely. And that's what I learned in 2013 when we started doing those candidate forums. We started calling them interviews, because you're going to tell us why we should hire you, not elect you. Because my vote is me saying that I want to hire you to serve me. And this is why I think you would be a good representative of me as that's democracy, right? It's a representative government. And so you have people who are from the people to say, don't worry about it, y'all. No, you don't say don't worry about it. You say, listen, what you want me to tell them when I get in there? And then when you get in there, you tell them what, and then you come back and say, this is what they said, right? And Dr. King, he said one of the things that he experienced with politicians and really well-meaning public servants is you go into these meetings sometimes representing your people, but after you come out of those meetings, you're representing them to your people.
Yeah.
And so the dynamic flips, and now you find yourself explaining and apologizing to your people on behalf of the system, instead of going in there challenging the system to do justice and operate with fairness and equity on behalf of your people. And so I'm always mindful of who I work for and who I serve when I go in those spaces, because it's very easy, if you don't have certain personal characteristics. And again, this is why I can't denounce the minister, because the values and the integrity of knowing whose you are and who you are won't allow me to accept some of those offers that are being made, because there's no self-respecting person would say that this is good for our community or this is good for our people. And you have to be able to have the fortitude to push back and know that if you're into it for the the VIP tickets, because we get tickets to the Rays games and we get first class parking, and they introduce you as brother councilman. Like, if that stuff, if you let that get to you, the threat of losing that will cause you to compromise some of your positions. Wow. And I thank God that I never really wanted any of that for myself anyway. I always just wanted to serve the people. And so they can't really threaten me with taking things that I never really wanted anyway. I just want to do God's will and be a true representative of the people in this space. And
But
it's easy to get caught up, though. I can see how people get caught up.
Yeah. Come on, Brother John. Beautiful.
Sister Starla?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Brother John, you mentioned, of course, you mentioned your beautiful mother. You mentioned your wife. So can you share, just again, the support system that your queen has been to you over these years, and your mom, you mentioned to her, calling her to get advice and counsel. So can you just talk about these dynamic women in your life? And then another part of that, with your great grandmother, that vision that she shared with your mother, did you have an opportunity to ever, meet your great grandmother? And did she share anything with you in terms of, her vision for you? If you could just talk about the powerful sisters in your life.
Thank you. That's amazing, because I actually, I'm the baby boy with 4 older sisters, and 2 of them, have since passed. But I'm the knee baby above me is 5 years older than me, so I grew up with sisters and that female influence. And I was really sensitive. And that's what my daddy used to call it. Some would call it a crybaby.
I see you, bro.
But I never had a chance to engage with my paternal, because my grandmother. So she made a special trip from North Florida to Central Florida, where my mother was living at the time, to tell her about this vision that she had for me. But I have very few recollection, or memories of her, because she died at the age of 53, which was very young. I realized, when you a child, you think 53 was old, but she was so young when she passed that I never really had a lot of interaction with her. So the vision that was articulated was always reinforced by my mother. And what she would do when I was younger was she would read the Bible to me, fostering and pouring water on this seed. And the benefit of being told that I was born to be a great man of God, it gave me a sense of purpose. And it always made me different. I look back on it now, and it made me different from those who I was around, because I knew why I was born, but I didn't know what I was born to do. I just knew that it was a purpose for my life, and that purpose was to serve God. Like, I didn't have a choice about it, right? When they ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, for me, it was always a preacher, because that's what I thought great men of God was preachers. And so, but that gift of purpose is what always guided me and gave me a conscience. Even when I was in the streets and doing wrong, I knew that it was not what I was supposed to be doing, and I wasn't born for that. And it also set up this conflict that I always had when I was doing wrong, because I knew that this wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. And the support system of having that gift from my grandmother and being reinforced by my mother was huge. And then my sister, who recently passed, she was the one that came and got me during an episode. I was actually suicidal. I had suicidal ideations, and I was threatening suicide in May of 1997. And she came and got me, and she helped me reconnect with my spiritual journey. And so she was Seventh-day Adventist, and so I started going to church with her, studying with Jehovah's Witnesses. And so that process began with my older sister, and I'm so grateful to Allah for how He used her to help me. And then in August is when I met Brother James, and the rest is history. And then my wife, man, I can't say enough about her as a support. I'll say that she has been my conscience, and she has helped me really be clear on why I'm doing things, because I struggled in my early years, and we've been together since high school, and I struggled with vanity for a long time, and doing things to be seen, doing things for attention, class clowning and acting up, and she always challenged me on my motivation. What's your reason? What's your motive? And that was a part of why I never ran for office, because I never had a reason of my own to do it. It was always people telling me, you would be good. I think you should do it. I think you should, should do it. But when she asked me my why, I didn't have a why for myself. And then when I clarified that why, that's when I decided that I was actually going to take this step and, pursue elected office as a way to serve our community. But her just being that voice of conscience, that sounding board, she is the observer, and y'all know my wife. She don't have a lot to say, Brother Chad and Brother James. She don't really speak a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
She's very observant.
Yes, she is.
And when I began to trust her observations, that's when I started seeing myself grow, and I started seeing things work out better for me. Just because I listened to what she said, right? Because she makes some observations that about people, quite frankly, and I would defend people, because I felt a certain way about them, but she saw something that I wasn't able to see, and it would cause conflict. But then when I started just stopping for a minute and listening and trusting her observation and her intuition, and then leveraging that, quite frankly, and saying, okay, this is what I'm thinking, but what do you see? How do you, and then being able to really use all of that to make my decisions and make my moves is what has really strengthened me and allowed me to really, I think, have the degree of success that we've been having. Because I mean, and just the fact that she supports my mission and my vision, and she doesn't give me grief about it. I can be gone, all day and come home and, not have to worry about, where you been and why it's like just the bond that we have and their support for the mission and actually being out there in the trenches. I told you, like, my children were some of my first canvassers when we were doing outreach. I got girls. And so the girls would come and help me knock doors. I remember when we used to go soldiering, my wife would be working, and I'd have my daughters with me, and we'd be going door to door. I'd be selling the Final Call newspaper, and my daughters, they had incense, and they would be selling the incense. And so they remember soldiering, going door to door with me as children. And it's members of the community who also remember that. And I think that's what has carried us when I stood up and I started taking these positions. It's people who remember me, on the corner. They remember me at their doors with my little girls, and, me in these spaces advocating, and, my wife, rolling up to dice games, doing shakedowns for Savior's Day gift. You know what I'm saying? Like, they roll up, this was, pre 9/11, like the late 90s, early 2000s, we was on them Savior's Day gift drives, and our people was, like we didn't have a phone list. We just go to the streets and, we pull up, and she's been here with me, through it all. And I'm so grateful to the way that she loves me, the way that she supports me, the way she corrects me when I'm wrong, and just, all the things. And my mother, again, is a source of inspiration. My prayer warrior, my granny. Like, I love to see my granny. She's not my biological grandmother, but she raised us. You got the neighborhood grannies, and she was at the swearing in, and just the pride, on her face of saying, I raised him. That, that's one that I raised. It's indescribable. And so, not wanting to disappoint them, they say the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And the next to that is the fear of your mama, your grandmama, and your wife.
Well said, beloved. All is due to Allah.
Allahu Akbar. Brother John, I remember our children growing up in the mosque, together. And just a fun fact, Sister Starla, Brother Minister James, his daughter taught my daughter how to tie her shoe. And this is my oldest child, so that's how long they have been around.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's something. They were just little running around every day like that at the mosque. We have some long history.
We do. We really do. That was the Blue Now days too, man.
Oh, the Blue Now days. Yes, sir.
The Blue Now with Brother Minister Stanley.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, as we are talking about family, I must announce that my wife and I celebrated our 42nd wedding anniversary yesterday.
Wow. 42 years. Wow. Okay.
I don't know what kind of medal I could give her, because I don't think they make a precious enough gem for her dealing with me for 42 years.
I feel that same way, Brother James.
Come on.
That's what I tell people. You know, it's just interesting. I know there's no other woman that could stand me. The way that she stands me, it's like I can't even imagine, man.
Yes,
you know, because like I said, man, since I was 16, 17 years old, you know, we've been together, and it hasn't always been easy. It hasn't been pretty, but I mean, she's always been consistent in her loyalty, her love, and her support for me, especially in my righteous pursuits. But even in wrong, she was with me, there too. But I'm just so grateful, to Allah for her.
Praise
Shout out, sister.
Congratulations, Brother James.
Yeah, right.
Praise be to Allah. All right.
Look, we go ahead, Brother Chad.
I was just going to say we had a question from the audience wanted to pose to Brother James, Brother John. I know we're a quarter till in, but this is from my dear brother, that student in the ministry, Brother Tyrone. He said, "Greeting, Brothers John Muhammad. Recently, Mayor Welch in St. Petersburg announced the agreement of a new ballpark and business infrastructure to be built in the coming future. Will the Black community benefit from this deal? And if yes, how?"
That's a really great question. And I think this kind of speaks to some of the things that we advocated for. So one of the things that we pushed for, Brother Tyrone, was a community benefit agreement policy. And that policy basically states that anytime there's a development over a certain amount where the city is contributing to it, then the city and the developer would have to meet with the community to iron out what the community benefit package will look like. And so that ballpark and stadium deal actually qualifies as a project that will have to go into the community benefit pipeline. And so the community will benefit from it. The Black community will benefit, but I think we will benefit to the degree with which we show up and participate in the process. And I'm there, of course, as the representative of the district, but we need more people from the community to be able to round out what these are, because I'm one member on a board of 8. So that means I have one vote. And if 4 others vote with me, then it passes. And so what helps to inform and influence that is community engagement, community participation. And so I think it is an opportunity for us to benefit. There's a process that we advocated for that will allow us to benefit. We're going to test that process thoroughly and put as much stress as we can on that process to ensure that we benefit. And, we going into it under no illusion because we have history, with, failed promises and those types of things, but we're going to do all that we can and use all of the tools at our disposal to make sure that the Black community benefits from it. We actually are in the process of approving an ordinance to establish a minority women in business enterprise program because we've identified disparities. So as a part of the package, we're holding them to goals and quotas on how much participation Black people will have. We're right now in conversations about ownership because that's another part of it. They have offered us leases and square footage, but we want acres and deeds and ownership. And so being able to go into these conversations, talking about what our ownership stake and equity in this project will be, these are all things that are still to be determined and hashed out. So the announcement was basically saying that we have an outline for a deal, But now the work of going into the terms and conditions is the phase that we're in. And our first meeting to do that is October 26th, Brother Tyrone. And you can follow the page, follow Councilmember Muhammad page, and we can provide that information to you on when we'll be meeting. But that's a very great question, brother.
Yes, thank you, Brother Tyrone. And keeping on this line of conversation, you alluded to, and of course we mentioned some of the programs that you are currently involved in, have been involved in. We want to give you the opportunity to talk about them according to which ones you choose. And more importantly, or equally as important, how could we help?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Brother James. One of the biggest things and where we need the most help is with the One Community Grocery Co-op. The One Community Grocery Co-op is a project that we initiated when Walmart left a local, area that has been identified as a food desert, and it is basically governed under the cooperative business structure, and the values of cooperative businesses have been defined, as self-help, self-responsibility, democratic structure, equality, equity, and then solidarity with other cooperatives. And so you can go to ocgc.coop and actually learn more about the co-op and support it. And because the idea is that we've been waiting for Superman, we've been waiting for somebody to bring us bread, and we haven't gotten it, and we haven't, or we've gotten the crumbs that have fallen from the table. And so the One Community Grocery Co-op is an initiative that we're organizing to create our own grocery store and provide, healthy food options for ourselves. And we're taking cues from the Detroit Food Commons. They actually just they're actually in the process of building a $28 million facility in Detroit. We've had members that have attended the Up and Coming conference in St. Paul, Minnesota, and bringing back the information on how we can actually pull this off and establish our community-owned grocery store. So ocgc.coop is one way that you can support us in that effort. I'm trying to think of something that you just got to go to the page because it's a lot. go to yourbrotherjohn.com, and also you can go to d7speaks.com, and that's where a lot of the initiatives are. But really, just I think studying more and connecting the dots, because we're looking to build a nation, right?
That's right.
But if we have no experience with operating and running a government, then it's going to make it that much harder for us. And so another part of the work that I'm doing by Allah's grace is being able to see what governing looks like as an elected official, and then being able to share some of these lessons learned and these realities of what it takes to run a city. Because when we talk about separation, here's something that was asked to me when I was in the Citizens Academy. They said, Brother John, when you flush your toilet, do you think about where that water goes? When you put your trash can out to the side of the street, do you think about where it goes when it's empty? When the mosquitoes is biting you, do you think about, how to mitigate that? These are all functions of city and county government. Like, we determine what your stormwater rates will be. We determine what will be invested in, infrastructure. The how many times a week your garbage gets dumped, the rotation for these types of things, whether you recycle or whether you use traditional garbage can, mosquito control, pest control, like all of these types of things are things that are aspects of running a government that most common people, us, particularly Black people, we think about that. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And so just being more involved and paying attention to the political processes and how things work in your area would be a great support, so that we don't get into a position where you are questioning, well, why are they doing that? Well, if you understand a little bit about government, you'll some of those questions will vanish, and then we can ask deeper questions that lead us to more productive and successful outcomes for our community.
Very beautiful, brother. And we look forward to continued success under your leadership and influence, not only in St. Petersburg, but throughout the Tampa Bay area. We want to thank you. Oh, Brother John, it is our great privilege and honor. Thank you so much for honoring us. And certainly you have to come back. We always try to get a commitment for a second time and a third time. And also you have a radio program, and we need to let the people know about that.
We do. So it's 99jamstheberg.com and 99.1 FM for those who are in St. Petersburg. You can also go to the TuneIn radio app and find 99 Jams the Berg. And we have the Tampa Bay Breakfast Club, and we're on the radio Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. 2 hours on the radio on 3 days a week. And so tune in. And we can continue. That's where we get a lot of information out. And quite frankly, it was because we had that platform that I think we were able to counter some of the negative, consequences that came with, my response to the litmus test, because we have our own platforms and we have spaces like this that we can come out and we can, really tell our story and why we're doing what we're doing. So tap in 99jamstheberg.com.
Keep up the great work. And in that line of asking for help, my dear family, we want to thank you so much for tuning in to Closing the Gap Broadcast Network. We are in our 7th year of broadcasting, as a matter of fact, and we've been blessed to grow the network to right now 8 broadcasts. And God willing, at the end of this month, we will have 10. And of course, our lofty goal at the end of the year is to have 20 network broadcasts, and we're on our way. We want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to tune in, not only on this broadcast, but our other 7 affiliate broadcasts on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays and Sundays. We want to fill up the whole week.
I love it, man.
As you can see, our dear sister Sheila, our producer and director, have put up the schedule. I have a testimony hosted by our dear brother, Student Minister Willie Muhammad, every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have How to Save Lives, hosted by our dear sister and Dr. Patrice Muhammad, every first and third Sunday, or rather that's Thursday. We got to make that correction on the flyer. 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the wonderful Rockwell Radio Show, hosted by our dear brother Vaughn and Big Dave C, every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, the Farrakhan Generation, hosted by our dear brother, currently now, brother Michael J.H. Muhammad and brother Ramel Muhammad. Our dear sister Mariam is on a sabbatical. She's actually, I believe, entered into college and she's studying. But as I informed her, and I want to announce it publicly, you ain't going nowhere. But let us continue. We have our dear brother and student national spokesperson and representative of what is referred to as our Latino community, our Spanish-speaking community, Nuestra Nación de Islam, hosted by Student Minister Abel Muhammad, who will continue the broadcast. He's currently teaching a course, I believe, at the time they were previously broadcasting. So it's just a matter of reorganization. And then, of course, we have our sister Healing with Angelica, hosted by Angelica every Thursday, Sister Angelica, at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Liberated Sisters, hosted by the student national correspondent to the Final Call newspaper, Sister Charlene Muhammad, every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And last and certainly not least, we have what we refer to as the mother program, our yours truly, Closing the Gap broadcast every Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We thank you for your time, your attention, And moreover, in this particular season, as we are currently approaching that time where we have to resecure our ownership of our domain. And of course, I mean, I have no doubt that we will, but we need to ask you to make an extra added effort in your financial support. There is a financial reality to these broadcasts. So continue to help us as you have, but we're asking you in this hour to do a little extra, as we have an obligation in the month of October to satisfy our 5-year term contract in owning this domain. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm going to turn it back over to our dear brother John to make some closing remarks, and we'll go into our closing commercials.
Well, thank you, Brother James, Brother Chad, Sister Starla, for the conversation and the opportunity. I really appreciate the line of questions. Very thoughtful and considerate and really humbling and deeply reflective. And so I appreciate you all for all that you're doing. And I'm really looking forward to continuing to serve. And I will be back when I'm on the campaign trail, brother.
Oh, absolutely. We'll be on the trail with you, brother.
Yes, we got to run to keep this seat, man. And so, but just knowing, you know, again, the growth of the broadcast and the network, and just seeing it, brother Chad, I'm always proud, man. You know, to see you and what Allah is doing with you and your family. It really warms my heart, man, to know, you know, where we come from, how we started, and what Allah is doing for each of us in this moment. You know? And so I'm really excited about what the future holds for every one of us individual believers, and I'm just grateful and thankful for the opportunity, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
And we are thankful and appreciative to you, dear brother. Once again, continue to help us. If you could scroll, Sister Sheila, those destinations, how people can help us. You can continue, first of all, by subscribing to our YouTube channel and following our Facebook channel. But you can donate to CTG Broadcast via Cash App, $CTG Broadcast, or PayPal at jkingdom1@aol.com, and also Zelle, Closing the Gap Broadcast at 813-481-3921. And we certainly appreciate your support. So we get this done, and we won't have to worry about it for the next 5 years.
Yes, sir.
All praises due to Allah. So at this time, thank you again, Brother John. Thank you, Brother Student Minister Chad Muhammad, and our dear sister Starla Muhammad. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Next